When a massive snake began insistently trying to slither into Liam's home, his first instinct was to keep it out at all costs. But as the creature persisted, something about its behavior struck him as unusual, prompting him to observe more closely. What Marlon discovered about the snake's desperate attempts to enter left him in a dilemma. Marlon hesitantly reached for the door handle, making a decision that would change everything. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Liam worked as a writer. That gave him the freedom to work anywhere and where he wanted. He had been traveling the world while working on his next novel when he got a call from his mother. His dad wasn't doing well, and she asked if he could come home. So he traveled home the next day. He has always been a kind man. His family and friends mean everything to him, so it was without a question that Liam would do such a thing for his mother. He came home to care for his father, taking time off from work. He would work from the comfort of his home and spend more time with his friends, or so he hoped. But if there is one thing traveling alone has taught him, it is that you can never plan too far ahead. During his stay at his parents' house, one of Liam's books went through the roof with sales. So he had to use the time he had planned to spend with his friends to work on his next book. Suddenly, there was a lot of pressure on him, and he didn't like it. It was a Monday afternoon, and Liam was in the middle of writing his book. He had been typing for 2 straight hours when he heard a strange sound. First, he didn't really notice it. But when it happened again, he stopped typing and listened closely. Where was this sound coming from? It was a vague ticking sound combined with something sliding. So Liam got up and started to look around the house. He thought it could be a family of mice running around, but he wanted to be sure before he called an exterminator. He looked behind the couch, but there was nothing there. He looked behind the chairs, cupboards, and even behind a big bookcase, but there were no mice. The sound was gone by now, and was about to start typing when something else happened. As Liam sat down, he noticed something moving outside. But when he went to the window to see what it was gone. Liam thought he might be imagining things because of all his time alone. That night, Liam lay in bed, not able to sleep. He was thinking and turning, trying to figure out what he had heard throughout the day. Liam woke up the next morning and got out of bed. He was starving, but he was so hung up on that sound yesterday that he forgot to go grocery shopping. Because of this, he had nothing to eat. He had to make a choice, go outside or order in. Since Liam started to work from home, he hadn't been outside, and that was a long time for him. So Liam decided to go grocery shopping. He put on his shoes and jacket and walked to his front door. But when he reached his hand to the doorknob, he suddenly stopped. It wasn't because he heard that sound again or saw something moving outside. No, it was something else. A sudden feeling of anxiety came over him, and all he could think of was his writing. If he went outside right now, it would cut back on his writing time. But not eating wasn't an option. Writer's block, that is what people call it. But for Liam, it was worse than just some blockage. His whole world started to crumble. All the stress from caring for his father to suddenly having a scary deadline lingering over his head started to come out all at once. He completely shut down, closing all his blinds, so his house became pitch black and crawled under his blanket on the couch. Like he planned on staying there for the rest of the day. But then his doorbell rang. The first time, Liam did nothing. But when the doorbell rang for a second time, he slowly got up. When Liam walked through his hallway, the person at the door became impatient and banged his fist on the front door. Liam quickly opened the door and was greeted by an angry delivery guy. This shook Liam out of his funk, and he suddenly realized he had been dealing with his writer's block the wrong way. He had to keep going and stop pushing. All he needed was a little distraction and a good night's rest. But he didn't know that tomorrow would be a very strange day. The next day arrived and Liam felt motivated to start writing again. But he had no idea what this day would bring. He worked on his book for an hour before the first strange things started happening. First, that weird sound came back. Liam tried to ignore it, but he couldn't. Then he swore he saw something by the window, but just like a couple of days ago, there was nothing there. But every time he looked out the window, there was nothing. He felt like he was losing his mind over this strange sound. What could be tormenting him like this? It had been 3 days now, and he began to get sick of it. Liam decided that there was only one thing left to do. He got a chair and set it up close to the window so that he could see outside. For the next hour, Liam waited patiently, but he started to get frustrated when he didn't see any activity outside. He was afraid to look away for even a moment, so the wait was long and boring. Just when he was really thinking about giving up, he noticed something moving. Liam saw more movement than he expected, and the size of the creature seemed far larger than what he'd anticipated. It was clearly an animal, but he couldn't quite see it in any detail. He finally decided that it was worth the risk to get closer, and he knew what he'd seen, but it was so impossible that he couldn't understand it. The animal outside was unlike anything he'd ever imagined, even in his dreams. After a minute or two, Liam sat on the ground and took deep breaths to process what he'd seen. Liam wondered if people would even believe him when he told them the story. There was a gigantic snake slithering in circles outside. It seemed to travel through the bushes and around the back of the house over and over again. It was the size of a car. How was that possible? A horrible thought went through Liam's mind as he tried to figure out what to do. Even if he wanted to go for help, how was he supposed to leave the house with an enormous predator outside? He had to make a plan. His first idea was to call the police. So he picked up his phone and called the station. When the officer at the station answered, Liam tried to give them as much detail as possible about the snake. But as soon as he was finished giving his description, the officer just laughed. They must have thought it was a prank call. Liam begged and begged them to help. The police promised that they would have an officer stop by to see if there was anything unusual going on around his house. Before Liam could ask any follow-up questions or give them more information about the snake, the officer hung up. Liam waited by the window and watched for the car to arrive. Liam got excited more than once when he heard a car coming or sirens nearby, but it was never an officer coming out to see him. Thoughts of the snake kept Liam half awake all night long. Every time he managed to fall asleep, he had a nightmare about the snake. He ended up staying up and thinking about what would happen if the snake decided to break through a window and come inside. When he got out of bed in the morning, Liam was determined to handle the snake if the police wouldn't take him seriously. He went through his entire house searching for weapons and found a few sharp objects that he thought might work to drive the snake away. But there was one more thing he needed to face the snake. Liam put on his thickest and most durable clothes as a kind of armor in case the snake bit him. Well, it wouldn't do much, but he hoped it would give him some layer of protection. Liam wanted to be sure about the snake's whereabouts before he went outside, so he checked the other windows in the house as well. Finally, he realized the problem. The snake was by the door, hidden by the bushes. He hadn't noticed it because it wasn't moving. Liam had to find out why. Liam wasn't sure if the snake was sleeping, sick, or dead. It wasn't moving at all. He tried tapping on the window to see if it would respond to noise, but the snake didn't budge. Just as Liam was working up the courage to open the door and see the snake up close, something made him leap back. Now, thankfully, Liam hadn't opened the door yet because the snake sprang into action and started banging its head on the front door. Liam trembled as he listened to it. What was it doing? He crept closer and used the peephole to observe the snake. Despite all his planning and thinking about how to deal with the snake, the truth had never even occurred to him until then. With only a bit of hesitation, Liam opened the front door. He could barely breathe because he was so nervous that maybe he'd misread the situation. Liam stood tall in the doorway and tried to be brave as he stared into the face of the snake. As soon as he saw it up close, he felt all of his worries wash away. He truly had figured out the right answer. It had taken him longer than it should have, but he at least had an answer. Liam waved to the snake and reached out like he was going to touch it. "Are you all done now?" he shouted at it. At the sound of his voice, Liam's friends hopped out of the bushes, all of them giggling and laughing. But instead of laughing along with them, Liam was angry. Why would they do such a thing? His friends explained that they wanted to help him with his novel by giving him something else to think about. They didn't want him to sit in the house and panic about writing all day. When Liam heard that, he accepted their apologies for scaring him and even agreed that maybe a break was what he really needed all along.